If you're looking for something to watch this Valentine's Day, I've got a great list of horror films for you to snuggle up with your significant other, or be alone if you want, and watch on a killer date night. Get those snacks ready, let's roll it.
Do you remember my name?
You never told me. La Donne sono del Gelo del Mondo.
And you're not afraid to embarrass yourself?
One of the more underrated monster movies that's on this list, and honestly does not get talked about enough, is Spring, released in 2014. This movie follows the concept that love can be a monster, and while that is not a groundbreaking theme, Spring handles it in one of the best ways that I have seen in a modern horror movie tale. This movie follows Lou Taylor Pucci, who plays an American who takes off to Italy because he's gotten in some trouble back in America, and he's clearing his head of some depressive things that have been going on in his life, and he catches the eye of a local beautiful woman played by Nadia Hilker. He ends up trying to integrate himself into a really beautiful town in Italy, falls in love with the girl, and progressively tries to get more and more involved in her life as she pushes him away for good reason. There is a ton of backstory that's delicately woven throughout what is basically portrayed as a love story, and it boils down to one ultimate decision at the end, which I won't spoil. It basically asks the question, would you give up power for love? This is a fantastically shot, beautifully acted, and amazing horror film that not enough people are talking about.
What happened? Caitlin exploded. What? Like a bomb? No, like a balloon? What?
On the other end of the spectrum, we've got a splatterfest with Spontaneous, released in 2020. This movie poses the question that can teenagers who basically just spontaneously combust at any moment in time, could this movie be romantic? And the answer is yes, absolutely it can. Brian Duffield's Spontaneous pulls on the audience members' heartstrings while splattering the characters' guts randomly in various situations throughout the movie. The characters feel squishier than ever in this movie. It's awesome. Catherine Langford and Charlie Plummer play doomed lovers who are finding romantic shelter while their classmates just seem to explode at random for no reason whatsoever, and the blood just flows all over the place on this movie. If you're squeamish, I would definitely skip this film, but if you like Splatterfest, this is definitely a film for you. The film basically asks the question, can love survive the most horrible circumstances that you can imagine? And does your bond with the person you care about live on after death? Ultimately, it feels like a young adult horror movie, but it is done in a fantastic way, and it feels oddly sweet at a lot of times. So if you're looking for a fun horror movie, this is definitely it.
I used to daydream about being old enough to go on dates. I had this image of myself holding hands with a really cute guy.
I feel like this movie is finally starting to get the attention it deserves. It reeks of style. It has a ton of great commentary on an old sex trope that's been in horror movies since the beginning of time, and that movie is It Follows, released in 2014. The movie basically plays on the fact that a supernatural STD can curse young people who are having sex. The movie tells the story of a character, Jay, who's a college student looking for romance and finds something else that hunts her throughout the movie after a one-night stand. Jay goes on a date with someone who she's interested in, things get steamy, and well, then that's the setup of the movie. Cinematography in this film and the way that the monster hunts her throughout the movie, the setups are a blast, tons of great scares, and if you hate that feeling of something lurking or coming after you or hunting you, this is gonna get under your skin a ton. It Follows received critical acclaim by critics because it's just stylish, it's lo-fi, and it's a creepy, well-made, great indie horror film that explores thought-provoking ideas about sex and horror beyond just slasher films. This is one of the best movies on this list, and it is a perfect movie for your date night if you haven't seen it.
Spend this Valentine's Day
He loves me not.
with someone you love.
He loves me. He loves me not.
I couldn't put together a Valentine's Day horror movie list without the movie Valentine, released in 2001. 5 women are looking for a relationship, and love is in the air as Valentine's Day approaches in this movie. 13 years after junior high's Valentine's Day dance, the characters in the movie start to receive strange and weird Valentine's Day cards that are signed by one of the awkward people in their class. One of the women ends up being murdered, and the police begin to question what happened all of those years ago, and why would this outcast seek revenge on the ladies after all this time. I don't want to spoil it. This is a very B cult horror movie status film at this time, but there's a great cast. It has Denise Richards from Starship Troopers, David Boreanaz from Buffy the Vampire Slayer fame, Marley Shelton from Sin City, and Katherine Heigl from Grey's Anatomy. It's also loosely based on the novel by Tom Savage, but everybody knows Urban Legend. If you like Urban Legend, directed by Jamie Banks, you'll definitely dig this film. If you're looking for gothic horror, this is one of the best in the genre, directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it's kind of getting the attention that it deserves, and that is Crimson Peak, released in 2015. The story follows a young and beautiful Edith who is visited by the ghost of her deceased mother, who warns her to beware of the Crimson Peak. She marries a very charming and dashing Sir Thomas Sharp and is whisked away to a remote and dilapidated gothic mansion where she begins to grow weak and start experiencing disturbing nightmares. Guillermo del Toro put together one of the most amazing ghost stories here, and while the CGI definitely did not age well, the cinematography, the lush colors, the locations, the sets are all awesome here, and I love the costumes. This movie drips with some serious atmosphere and ultimately follows the story of Edith as she learns that she's able to communicate with the dead, and she tries to decipher the dark secrets that the ghosts of the mansion are trying to tell her, while learning who the true monster is residing in the home. Expertly directed, expertly paced, and just an amazing gothic romance story, and perfect for a horror movie date night.
Okay, where is she? Listen. She is not dead. I went to her grave. There's a hole in the ground.
Aubrey Plaza of Parks and Rec fame has been showing up in a lot of great movies. She did that recent movie on Netflix. Before that, she also did a horror movie, which is kind of tongue-in-cheek and fun, called Life After Beth, released in 2014. Aubrey Plaza, as we all know, if you're a fan of her, is at her best when she's just her deadpan, gloomy self and excessively weird. In Life After Beth, she plays a zombified girlfriend that comes back from the dead in Jeff Baina's directorial debut, and Aubrey definitely runs wild with the premise and knocks it out of the park here. The movie takes cues from other zombie comedies like Shaun of the Dead, and while Shaun of the Dead kind of deserves to be on this list, I thought Life After Beth was a more underappreciated one, so that's why I put it on here. Life After Beth, rather than being a brutally terrifying creature feature about zombies, it's more about the following of the relationship between Zach, played by Dan DeHaan, suddenly learning that his deceased girlfriend has been resurrected by her parents, played by John C. Reilly and Molly Shannon, and they are awesome in this movie. And as suspected, she's not who she used to be. Very, very funny and grotesque. Aubrey Plaza does a great job. If you're looking for a horror movie that's a little bit more lighthearted, definitely on the dark comedy side, and you like zombies, this is definitely for you.
Until they went looking for a thrill and stumbled on the chilling fact. Let's proceed.
I might get some flack for this one, but it is one of my favorite B cult horror films that I feel like finally is starting to get some appreciation despite how kind of bad it is. Return of the Living Dead 3, released in 1993. The Return of the Living Dead series, for the most part, has been goofy, funny horror that's done really well with practical effects and gore, but the third entry is a standalone story in the zombie franchise that focuses more on a tragic love story between two teens. One of the characters, his name is Kurt, is the son of a colonel who's working on a classified military project at a top secret compound. Kurt and his girlfriend Julie end up swiping his key card, getting into the compound and realizing they've been doing some experiments on reanimating the dead, and they find this chemical that has been in the Return of the Living Dead series since the start. What ends up happening is Kurt and Julie are in a horrible motorcycle accident, and Julie ends up having something happen to her where she passes away. I won't spoil the whole thing for you, but you can imagine, zombie movie, girlfriend passes, person loves her, yeah, she's gonna come back as a zombie. The acting is pretty bad in this, but in a great way. If you love cheesy dialogue and you like practical effects and horror and great kills, and one of the best parts is the main zombie turning into this punk rock fetishistic nightmare that is just a blast.
This is the most horrific event this town has ever seen. Authorities are calling this the Valentine's Day Massacre.
You can't have a Valentine's Day list without My Bloody Valentine. While the original is a fantastic horror film and I highly recommend it, I also really enjoy the remake from 2009. The movie ultimately follows the story of a Valentine's Day massacre that was carried out by a sole survivor of a tragic mining collapse. After the heart of one of the victims is put in a box of chocolates, the masked killer disappears into the mine. And now, 10 years later, a bloody heart-shaped box is delivered and the rumor has spread that the killer has returned. This is one of the best Valentine's Day date night slasher horror movie flicks that's just gonna get you pumped up, and it's a lot of fun if you like movies like this. A messy love triangle, gory Valentine's themed murders, beautiful women running around in skimpy outfits, and just a twist ending that will make you wonder. It's based on the 1981 film, but this remake has received a ton of positive praise. It's a blast. Definitely check it out.
Well, hello, darling.
Bride of Chucky, I feel like this movie also has aged into cult horror movie status. When it came out, it wasn't received very well. I watched this one recently and it's a lot of fun. After a 7-year hiatus following Child's Play 3, everyone's favorite good guy doll has come back in Bride of Chucky. One of the things I love about this movie is the remake or recasting of the Chucky doll with all the stitches to make him look more horrifying than ever. The story follows Chucky finding his former lover, Tiffany Valentine, played by Jennifer Tilly, who is awesome in this movie. Spat after spat after spat of two very toxic people in a relationship that shouldn't be together, but what you get is a homicidal rampage from point A to point B that is a blast to watch and you cannot look away. One of the best scenes is when they check into the honeymoon location and you know what happens between the two dolls. It is hilarious, it's dysfunctional, it's a ton of fun to watch, there's a lot of great kills, and it's basically just bad romance horror at its finest.
So, at midnight, you have to play a game.
Why?
It's just something we do when someone new joins the family.
A game.
Another horror movie that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough, and Samara Weaving is awesome in this movie, is Ready or Not, released in 2019. Ready or Not follows the story of Grace, who has finally married the man of her dreams, who is handsome and charming and heir to a family board game empire. Following the wedding ceremony, the family reveals that they must take part in some sort of strange tradition, and the bride is told to draw a card from a game deck that will reveal the name of the game that the family is supposed to play. It sets off an event that makes her basically play hide and seek with a pretty homicidal twist. I don't want to spoil it for you. This movie is a blast, total wild ride to watch. The kill scenes are insane. Grace ends up adorned with blood spattered madness all over her wedding gown as she must survive until dawn. This is a horror comedy. It received a ton of positive reviews upon release. I don't see a lot of people talking about it, but it totally belongs on this list because of the love in the air type feel of the horror film. It is a bloody good film for someone who's going through a breakup or a couple who just wants to watch Samara Weaving kill a ton of people.
Pretty woman to love and to take care of them.
Love me. Love me.
Now, I feel like this movie also is not getting enough praise that it deserves. It was released fairly recently on Shudder, but it looks very old and psychedelic, and that's The Love Witch, released in 2016. The movie looks like it was released in the 1960s. It is an awesome homage to 35mm Technicolor film. What The Love Witch is, though, is a modern story about a modern woman looking for love, and she ends up leaving bodies in her wake. The director, Anna Biller, is pairing female fantasy with the trope of femme fatale to awesome effect here. The story follows a young and beautiful witch named Elaine who is searching for a man to love her, and she mixes up spells and potions to seduce these unsuspecting men, and nothing ever works out correctly. When her magic works too well, she ends up running into the problem of men being too obsessed with her. There's magic, potion mixing, men falling in love and clinging too much. It is an awesome movie that explores a lot of really cool concepts. It looks like it was released straight out of the 60s and received a ton of critical acclaim for its visuals, style, and awesome thought-provoking story. Really fun movie. Definitely check this one out this Valentine's Day.
This is my son, Charlie, and his girlfriend.
Hi. So Jerry is our new neighbor.
While I love the 1980s version of this vampire flick, the remake in 2011 of Fright Night was also awesome. You can watch either one, but I'm going to talk about the 2011 one. Charlie Brewster and his best friend Edward, Evil Ed, realize that classmates have started to go missing in their small suburb, and a charming new neighbor has moved next door, and Ed believes that this man, named Jerry, is responsible for all these disappearances of his classmates, and he has this wild, wacky theory that his neighbor is a vampire. Ed goes missing, and Charlie decides to investigate this character Jerry, who is devilishly handsome and who woos his victims into his vampiric embrace using charm and good looks, the things that a vampire typically does. What this ultimately is a story, though, is Charlie's bravery of risking it all for the love of his life. Colin Farrell plays the villain, and he is awesome in this. And this version also stars Anton Yelchin, rest in peace, of Star Trek fame, alongside Colin Farrell and Christopher Mintz-Plasse. This is one of the best horror movie watches on a date night. It's fun, kind of lighthearted, but just enough scariness to have your date night be a good time.
13 years ago, a brutal killer struck.
Bye-bye.
This movie is also kind of bad, but it belongs on this list because it takes place on Valentine's Day in the film, and that's Lover's Lane from 1999. This is an incredibly cliche horror story involving a man who has a hook hand and he escapes a mental institution to prey on teens that go to the hookup spot known as Lover's Lane. On Valentine's Day, one of the characters, Chloe, her mom is murdered in a car of the man that she was having an affair with, and then 13 years later, Chloe makes the mistake of returning to the site of the killings, the notorious Lover's Lane. Little does she know that the man from her past is obsessed, and I don't want to spoil it from there, but it is a horrendously bad, fun watch of the Valentine's horror genre. Anna Faris of Scary Movie fame makes her acting debut as a supporting character in Lover's Lane. It is ultimately just a really bad teen scream slasher film. If you like that kind of thing from the late 90s and you don't mind laughing at a bad horror movie with your partner, this is a great watch.
Scared me.
And the last one on my list, Happy Death Day, and the sequel, Happy Death Day to You. Happy Death Day was released in 2017 and the sequel in 2019. This is basically a slasher version of Groundhog Day, and it wouldn't be complete with a love story, and Happy Death Day provides one of the best ones in the love horror mashup genre. This is a horror comedy that stars Jessica Roth as a self-involved college student who gets murdered by a masked maniac and keeps waking up at the beginning of the day, reliving the same events over and over and over again to a maddening degree, and those relived events include her reliving her inevitable death until she gets it right to get out of the loop. Roth is an awesome, charismatic star. She does a great job in this film, and her chemistry with the other characters is magnetic. I don't want to spoil this one too much for you, but if you like the whole time travel loop thing, you like love stories, you like horror comedies, the cast is great in this film, and the first Happy Death Day followed by the sequel is a great back-to-back watch if you're looking for something on your date night. Check out this list here for the top horror movies with crazy cults, including Knock at the Cabin, and check out this list here if you want to see my favorite body horror movies, including Infinity Pool. Thanks so much for watching. Scare you guys next time.